She was the invisible girl who never spoke up until she discovered her stepfather's fiancé had been recording his every word for months. Emma pressed her ear against the mahogany door of her stepfather's home office, her heart hammering as she heard the familiar click of recording equipment being switched off. The 17-year-old had always been invisible in this house, the quiet, awkward daughter of his late wife. But tonight, that invisibility had become her superpower. Through the crack beneath the door, she'd watched Marcus Chun, tech billionaire, and her mother's widower methodically remove tiny surveillance devices from behind picture frames, inside lamp bases, under his desk drawer. Each bug carefully placed, each one broadcasting his private conversations to someone he trusted completely, someone who was supposed to love him. Emma's hands trembled as she clutched the technical blueprint she'd found earlier, a detailed schematic showing every device placement, every recording schedule, every violation of trust. Emma retreated to her bedroom, sliding her mother's wedding ring from its hiding place in her jewelry box. The simple platinum band caught the moonlight streaming through her window, and for a moment she could almost hear her mother's voice. "Watch and listen, sweetheart. Sometimes the quietest person in the room sees the most." 2 years ago, this house had been filled with laughter. Her mother, Sarah, had transformed Marcus from a workaholic tech mogul into someone who remembered to eat dinner, who told bedtime stories, who built blanket forts on rainy Sundays. Emma had been shy even then, but her mother understood her silences, translated her whispered observations into family conversations. Then the cancer came, swift and merciless. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral, leaving Marcus and Emma drowning in their separate griefs. Marcus threw himself back into his company, Chun Technologies, working 18-hour days while Emma navigated high school like a ghost. They barely spoke beyond polite exchanges about schedules and school events. Victoria Matthews appeared 6 months ago, arriving at a charity gala where Marcus was receiving an innovation award. Emma had been there, invisible in her black dress, watching from a corner table as Victoria approached Marcus with perfect timing, just as he looked most lost in the crowd. Beautiful, accomplished, 35 to his 42. Victoria was everything a grieving widower might think he needed. The courtship was swift. Victoria understood technology, having worked in corporate consulting. She listened to Marcus talk about circuit boards and market projections with genuine interest. She brought warmth back to the house, cooking elaborate dinners, organizing social gatherings, planning weekend getaways. But Emma noticed things others missed. How Victoria's smile never quite reached her eyes when she thought no one was looking. How she steered conversations away from Emma's mother, as if Sarah had never existed. How she asked casual questions about Marcus's business dealings, his financial arrangements, his security protocols. "I'm worried Emma isn't adjusting well," Victoria told Marcus one evening, her voice carrying the perfect note of concerned care. Emma had been walking past the living room, invisible as always. "She's so withdrawn. Maybe she needs professional help." Marcus had sighed, running his hands through his graying hair. "She's always been quiet." Sarah understood her better than I do. "But Sarah isn't here anymore," Victoria had said gently, placing her manicured hand on his arm. "Emma needs stability now, structure. Maybe boarding school would help her develop independence." Emma had frozen in the hallway, understanding the subtext. Victoria wanted her gone. That night, Emma had started paying closer attention. She noticed how Victoria positioned herself between Marcus and any mention of family memories. How she gradually replaced Sarah's photos with her own tasteful decorations. How she had somehow convinced Marcus to update his will for tax purposes. The engagement announcement came last month. A small ceremony was planned for Christmas, just 6 weeks away. Victoria would become Mrs. Chun, and Emma would become an obstacle to be managed. But invisible girls see things others miss. And Emma had been watching. Emma discovered the love letters while cleaning Victoria's study, a task Victoria had specifically requested, claiming she trusted Emma's careful attention to detail. The printed emails were tucked inside a leather portfolio, hundreds of them, all supposedly from Marcus to Victoria during their early courtship. But Emma recognized the language patterns. These weren't Marcus's words. "My dearest Victoria," one read, "your understanding of both technology and the human heart amazes me. I've never met anyone who could discuss quantum computing and then seamlessly transition to planning a romantic dinner. The phrasing was too formal, too calculated. Marcus spoke in fragments when he was emotional, not flowing paragraphs. Emma photographed several letters with her phone, her hands shaking as she heard Victoria's heels clicking up the stairs. "Emma, sweetie, how's the cleaning going?" Victoria appeared in the doorway, her smile perfect and cold. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Emma's monthly allowance. "Almost finished," Emma whispered quickly, closing the portfolio. Victoria's eyes sharpened. "You know, I've been thinking about your future. Marcus works so hard, and I worry that having a teenager around might be stressing him unnecessarily." Emma's stomach clenched. "I try not to bother him." "Oh, honey, it's not about bothering. It's about what's best for everyone." Victoria perched on the edge of her desk, studying Emma like a scientist examining a specimen. "I've been researching some excellent boarding schools. Academic environments where quiet girls like you really thrive." The words were kind, but Victoria's tone carried an unmistakable threat. Emma had learned to read the subtle violence in adults' voices, the way they could destroy you with concern. "I want to stay home," Emma managed. "Of course you do. Change is scary." Victoria stood, smoothing her sweater. "But sometimes we have to make difficult decisions for the people we love. Marcus has been through so much loss. He deserves peace now, don't you think?" That evening, Emma watched Victoria perform her nightly transformation from creditor to perfect fiancé. When Marcus arrived home, exhausted from board meetings, Victoria was waiting with his favorite wine and a home-cooked meal. She listened to his frustrations with competitors and regulatory challenges, offering intelligent questions and supportive murmurs. "How was your day, Em?" Marcus asked, noticing Emma hovering at the kitchen entrance. Before Emma could respond, Victoria spoke. "She's been such a help today. I had her organize my study. She's so detail-oriented. Though I think all this domesticity might be boring for a bright girl like Emma." Marcus smiled tiredly. "You're lucky to have Victoria's attention, She sees potential in you that I might miss." Emma wanted to scream. Victoria was systematically erasing her from Marcus's life, and he was helping her do it. The woman who claimed to love him was mining his conversations for information, forging love letters to rewrite their history, and planning to ship his daughter away all while Marcus praised her for her kindness. Later that night, Emma heard Victoria on the phone in the garden, thinking she was alone. "The timeline is perfect," Victoria was saying. 6 months, maybe less. The girl's the only real obstacle now, but I'm handling that. Emma pressed herself against her bedroom window, straining to hear more. But Victoria had moved too far away, leaving Emma with only fragments of a conversation that confirmed her worst fears. Victoria's mask was slipping, and Emma was the only one who could see what lay beneath. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from her study group, but she'd accidentally left her recording app running from earlier, when she'd been dictating notes for her history paper. As she opened the app to stop the recording, she realized it had captured something else entirely. Victoria's phone. Conversation from the garden dot. Her heart pounded as she plugged in her earbuds and listened to the 43-minute recording. Most of it was silence, but around the 30-minute mark, Victoria's voice came through clearly. "The prenup is handled. I convinced him it was romantic, protecting what we both bring to the marriage. But the life insurance changes need another month." Victoria's laugh was nothing like the warm sound she made around Marcus. This was sharp, calculating. "No, the girl suspects something, but she's too scared to speak up." Classic overlooked child desperate for approval, terrified of confrontation. Emma's hands shook as she listened to herself being dissected. "Marcus feels guilty about not connecting with her, which makes him easy to manipulate. I just have to position myself as the bridge between them while gradually suggesting she needs more independence." A pause. "Boarding school applications are due next week. I've already filled out 3. The recording became muffled as Victoria moved farther from the house, but Emma caught fragments. Liquidate the tech stocks first. Overseas accounts. Forensic accounting won't find anything. Looks like a tragic accident. Emma yanked out her earbuds, nauseous. Victoria wasn't just planning to steal from Marcus. She was planning something far worse. The next morning, Emma tried to approach Marcus in his study. He was reviewing quarterly reports, surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled papers. "Marcus?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. He looked up, distracted. "What's up, Em?" "I need to talk to you about Victoria." His expression immediately shifted to parental concern. "Is everything okay? She mentioned you two had a good conversation yesterday about your future." Emma pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. "I accidentally recorded something. You need to hear." "Emma," Marcus's voice carried a warning, "Victoria has been nothing but kind to you. If you're having adjustment issues, we can talk to someone professional, but I won't have you making accusations. Please, just listen to 30 seconds. No." Marcus stood, his face flushed with disappointment. "Your mother wouldn't want this." "Jealousy, Emma. Victoria is going to be your stepmother. You need to find a way to accept that." Emma felt tears burning her eyes. "Mom would want you to be safe. Your mother would want me to be happy," Marcus said firmly. "Victoria makes me happy. Can you understand that?" Emma nodded mutely and fled to her room, where she sat staring at her phone. The recording was clear evidence of Victoria's intentions, but Marcus wouldn't listen. Who would believe a shy 17-year-old over a charming, successful woman? That afternoon, Victoria knocked on Emma's bedroom door. "Can we talk, sweetie?" Emma quickly hid her phone. "Sure." Victoria entered with 2 cups of hot chocolate, her expression maternal and concerned. "Marcus told me you're having some worries about our engagement. That's completely natural." She sat on Emma's bed, close enough that Emma could smell her expensive perfume. "I know this is hard. Losing your mother, seeing your father move on, it must feel like losing her all over again." Emma remained silent, recognizing the trap. "But here's the thing about family," Victoria continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Sometimes people who ask too many questions, who won't accept happiness when it's offered, sometimes those people discover that family loyalty has limits." Victoria's hand rested on Emma's knee, her manicured nails pressing just hard enough to hurt. "Smart girls know when to let sleeping dogs lie. You're a smart girl, aren't you, Emma?" Emma found Marcus's old laptop in the basement storage room, buried beneath boxes of her mother's books. It was his previous work computer, replaced 6 months ago when Victoria had convinced him to upgrade his entire system for security reasons. Emma remembered Victoria insisting they donate the old equipment. But Marcus had sentimentally kept this one. The laptop still had power, and Marcus had never been careful about clearing browser histories. Emma's fingers trembled as she navigated through months of cached data, searching for any trace of Victoria's digital footprint. What she found made her blood run cold. Victoria's research on Marcus dated back 18 months, 6 months before her mother had even died. Dozens of searches for Marcus Chon net worth, Chon Technologies stock value, California inheritance laws. She'd studied Marcus like a predator studying prey, learning his habits, his vulnerabilities, his emotional triggers. Even more disturbing were the searches about Emma herself, manipulating stepchildren, teenage behavioral problems, legal guardianship transfers, boarding school psychological evaluations. Emma screenshot everything, her heart racing as she uncovered the depth of Victoria's planning. There were cached articles about men who died in accidents shortly after remarrying, each case involving substantial life insurance payouts. Victoria had researched every detail of Marcus's business structure, his security systems, even his medical history. But the most chilling discovery was a folder of photos, taken without Marcus's knowledge, pictures of him jogging his regular route, eating at his favorite restaurant, even sleeping in his bedroom. Victoria had been surveilling him long before they'd met. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Jake Martinez, her lab partner in AP Computer Science. "Still need help with that coding project?" Jake was quiet like Emma, but where she retreated into invisibility, he channeled his introversion into technology. He could make computers do things that seemed like magic, and more importantly, he wouldn't judge her for what she was about to ask. She texted back, "Can you meet me at the library after school? I need help with something important." That afternoon, in the library's computer lab, Emma showed Jake selected screenshots, careful not to reveal everything. "Someone's been researching my stepfather," she whispered. "I think they might be planning to hurt him." Jake's dark eyes widened behind his glasses. "This is serious, Emma. This looks like stalking behavior. How can I prove it?" "The browser history," could have been deleted by now. Jake's fingers flew across the keyboard. Browser data leaves traces even after deletion. If we can access the hard drive directly. He paused, studying Emma's face. But this isn't school project stuff. If someone's really in danger, you need to involve adults. I tried. He won't listen to me. Jake considered this, his expression troubled. Okay, but we do this carefully. Document everything, make backup copies, and if we find proof of actual danger, we go to the police whether your stepfather likes it or not. Emma nodded, grateful for the first time in months to have someone believe her dot as they worked. Neither noticed Victoria's car, parked across from the library, or her figure watching them through the tinted windows, her phone pressed to her ear. We have a problem, Victoria was saying quietly. The girl's not giving up. Emma waited until Sunday morning, when Marcus was reviewing quarterly reports in his study. Victoria had gone to yoga class, or so she claimed. Emma knocked softly on the doorframe, holding a manila folder containing printed screenshots and her most damning evidence. Marcus, I really need you to look at something. He glanced up from his financial reports, his expression already weary. Emma recognized the look, the same one he'd worn at parent-teacher conferences, board meetings, anywhere he felt obligated but overwhelmed. If this is about Victoria again, just look. Emma placed the folder on his desk, her hands shaking. Please. Marcus sighed, but opened the folder. His face remained impassive as he flipped through the screenshots of Victoria's searches. The surveillance photos, the cached browser history. Emma watched hopefully as his businessman's instincts engaged, the same analytical mind that had built a tech empire. Where did you get these? His voice was carefully controlled. Your old laptop, the one from your office. You went through my private computer? Emma's heart sank. Marcus, look at the dates. She was researching you before Mom died. She was planning this. Marcus closed the folder and pushed it back toward her. Emma, I'm disappointed in you. These screenshots could be fabricated. Even if they're real, people research potential partners online. It's normal. But the photos of you sleeping could be explained dozens of ways. Marcus's voice hardened. What I see here is a teenage girl so desperate to keep her father. To herself that she's willing to invade privacy and make accusations against someone who's been nothing but kind to her. Emma felt tears threatening. I have a recording, too, of her on the phone talking about liquidating assets and... Stop. Marcus stood, his face flushed with anger. This behavior ends now. Victoria has been patient with your adjustment issues, but I won't let you sabotage our relationship with conspiracy theories. At that moment, Victoria's key turned in the front door. Her voice carried down the hallway, bright and cheerful. I'm back. I brought those pastries you love, Marcus. She appeared in the study doorway, radiant in her yoga outfit, holding a bakery box. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw Emma's tear-stained face and the folder on Marcus's desk. Is everything all right? Victoria's voice carried perfect notes of concern and confusion. Marcus looked at Emma with a mixture of disappointment and exhaustion. Emma has some concerns about our relationship that she wanted to discuss. Victoria's eyes found the business card collection on Marcus's desk cards from various conferences and networking events, including one from the charity gala where they'd supposedly first met. But Emma had found that same card in Victoria's purse weeks before the gala, proof that their chance encounter had been orchestrated. Oh, sweetie, Victoria said, moving to place a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. I know this is hard. Change is scary, especially when you're already dealing with so much loss. Emma wanted to scream, to grab the business card, and force Marcus to see the truth. But Victoria's grip on her shoulder was firm, almost painful, and her eyes held a warning. Maybe we should set up some counseling sessions, Victoria continued, to help Emma process these feelings in a healthy way. Marcus nodded gratefully. That's a wonderful idea. You're so understanding, Victoria. Emma watched her last chance slip away as Marcus embraced the woman who was planning to destroy him. Mrs. Chun found Emma crying in the kitchen at midnight, surrounded by the evidence Marcus had refused to examine. The older woman set down her cup of tea and studied the scattered papers without judgment. Cannot sleep either? Mrs. Chun's accent carried the weight of her homeland, but her English was precise. She'd been Marcus's housekeeper for 3 years, arriving shortly after Emma's mother's diagnosis when the family needed extra help Emma quickly tried to gather the papers, but Mrs. Chun gently stopped her. I see you looking, watching, like me. Mrs. Chun sat down across from Emma, her weathered hands folding over the immigration documents she'd been reviewing. In my country, I was police detective for 15 years before coming to America. Old habits, they do not die. Emma's eyes widened. She'd never known this about the quiet woman who cleaned their house and prepared their meals with such careful attention. You were a detective? Mrs. Chun nodded. Fraud division. I investigated people who pretend to be something they are not. She gestured to Emma's evidence. May I look? For the next hour, Mrs. Chun examined every screenshot, every printed page, every piece of evidence Emma had gathered. Her expression grew increasingly grave. This woman, Mrs. Chun said finally, she is not who she says she is. Emma felt a surge of relief finally, someone who believed her. Marcus won't listen to me. Men in grief, they want to believe in second chances. Makes them easy targets. Mrs. Chun's fingers traced the surveillance photos of Marcus. But this is not coincidence. This is hunting. Emma leaned forward eagerly. What can we do? Mrs. Chun was quiet for a long moment, studying Emma's tear-stained face. In my country, we have saying, the mouse that would survive does not sleep in the cat's bed. You understand? Emma nodded. Miss Victoria, she is dangerous. But you, Mrs. Chun touched Emma's hand gently. You are not mouse. You are observer, like good detective. Mrs. Chun pulled out a small notebook from her apron pocket. 3 weeks ago, I see Miss Victoria in Mr. Marcus's office when he is not home. She tells me she is looking for papers he asked her to find, but she searches his desk like someone looking for secrets. Emma's pulse quickened. Did you see what she took? She photographed documents with her phone, insurance papers, bank statements, business contracts. Mrs. Chun's expression hardened. Yesterday, I find listening device and telephone in kitchen. Very small, very professional. Emma gasped. She's bugging the house? Not just house. Mr. Marcus's car, his office at work. I find 3 devices this week. Mrs. Chun showed Emma a small plastic bag containing tiny electronic components. I removed them, but she will notice soon. The 2 sat in the dark kitchen, an unlikely alliance forming between the overlooked teenager and the observant housekeeper. We must be very careful, Mrs. Chun warned. People like Miss Victoria, when they feel threatened, they become unpredictable, dangerous. Emma thought of Victoria's hand on her shoulder that afternoon, a subtle threat in her touch. She knows. I suspect her. Then we must work quickly, but properly, like real investigation. Evidence that cannot be dismissed or explained away. Mrs. Chun opened her notebook, revealing pages of careful observations written in neat handwriting. Tomorrow, we begin building case that will make Mr. Marcus listen before it is too late. The next evening, Mrs. Chun spread a police report template across the kitchen table. The document was yellowed with age, printed in both Chinese and English, a remnant from her detective days in Beijing. Evidence must tell story, Mrs. Chun explained, her finger tracing the formal sections. Timeline, witnesses, physical proof, motive. Like building house foundation first, then walls, then roof. Emma studied the template, amazed by its thoroughness. You really did this professionally. 15 years investigating financial crimes. Husbands who steal from wives, business partners who disappear with money, romance scams targeting lonely people. Mrs. Chun's expression grew sad. Always the same pattern. Predator finds vulnerable person, builds trust, then takes everything. Emma felt a chill of recognition. That's exactly what Victoria's doing. Yes, but knowing and proving are different things. Mrs. Chun pulled out a notebook and began sketching a timeline. We must document everything, create evidence chain that cannot be broken. Over the next 2 hours, Mrs. Chun taught Emma the basics of building a criminal case. They organized Emma's evidence chronologically, photographed the surveillance devices Mrs. Chun had removed, and began documenting Victoria's behavioral patterns. Your recording from garden, Mrs. Chun said, is good start, but we need more. We need to show pattern of deception, planning, threat. Emma showed Mrs. Chun her phone recording. The older woman listened intently, occasionally stopping to take notes. She mentions timeline, overseas accounts, making something look like accident, Mrs. Chun summarized grimly. This is serious threat to Mr. Marcus's life. Emma's stomach twisted. How do we prove intent to murder? step by step. First, we establish false identity, then financial motive, then evidence of planning. Mrs. Chun pulled out a manila folder. I make some calls to friends who still work in law enforcement. Victoria Matthews, this name. It appears on no official records before 2 years ago. Emma's eyes widen. She's using a fake identity? Name exists, but belongs to woman who died in car accident in Nevada. 2019. Someone stole her identity, built new life with her social security number. Mrs. Chun's expression was grim. Professional criminals know how to do this. They spent another hour organizing their evidence into categories: false identity, financial motive, surveillance evidence, threats, and timeline. Emma felt overwhelmed, but also empowered for the first time. Her fears were being treated as legitimate concerns by someone with expertise. Tomorrow, Mrs. Chun said, we begin phase 2. We set trap. What kind of trap? We let Miss Victoria think she has won. You will appear to accept boarding school. Stop asking questions. Act like defeated teenager. Mrs. Chun's smile was sharp. Meanwhile, we gather final evidence we need. Emma felt a flutter of fear. What if she realizes we're investigating her? Mrs. Chun's expression grew serious. Emma, you must understand, if we are right about Miss Victoria, she is planning to kill Mr. Marcus. Maybe soon. We cannot stop investigation because we are afraid. The weight of responsibility settled on Emma's shoulders. She thought of her mother's wedding ring hidden in her jewelry box, and the promise she'd made to protect the family her mother had loved. What do you need me to do? Mrs. Chun smiled approvingly. Tomorrow, you become actress. You pretend to be scared, quiet girl who gives up, but really, you are detective gathering evidence to save your father's life. Emma nodded, feeling something shift inside her. She was no longer the invisible girl who hid from confrontation. She was becoming someone who fought back. Mom would be proud, she whispered. Mrs. Chun squeezed her hand. She would be very proud. Emma played her part perfectly. At breakfast, she apologized to Victoria for her behavior and asked quietly about the boarding school applications. Victoria's eyes gleamed with triumph as she pulled out glossy brochures from prestigious East Coast institutions. I'm so glad you're being mature about this, Victoria said, stroking Emma's hair with false maternal affection. You'll love Whitmore Academy. It's where successful families send their daughters to prepare for bright futures. Marcus beamed with relief. I knew you two would work things out. Victoria, thank you for being so patient with Emma's adjustment. Later that morning, while Victoria was at her personal trainer appointment, Emma and Mrs. Chun executed their plan. Mrs. Chun had discovered that Victoria's gym membership was another lie. She actually spent those hours at a cybercafe downtown, conducting business on computers that couldn't be traced back to her. Emma accessed Marcus's home office computer using the password. She'd observed him typing countless times. Mrs. Chun had taught her how to create forensic copies of financial documents without leaving digital footprints. What they found was devastating. Marcus's business accounts showed systematic transfers to offshore holdings, each transaction small enough to avoid automatic banking alerts. Over 6 months, Victoria had moved nearly $3 million into accounts traced to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Look at this, Emma whispered, pointing to a document on Marcus's desktop. Life insurance policy changes. The policy, originally naming Emma as beneficiary, had been modified to make Victoria the primary beneficiary of Marcus's $15 million life insurance policy. The changes had been made just 2 weeks after their engagement with Marcus's signature, notarized by someone Emma didn't recognize. Mrs. Chun examined the signature closely. This looks different from Mr. Marcus's usual writing. Too smooth, too perfect. Emma's hands shook as she photographed the documents. She forged his signature. They found more evidence of Victoria's methodical planning, research into untraceable poisons, maps of Marcus's jogging routes with timing notations, and a draft email to Marcus's business partner discussing the tragic accident that would soon require Victoria to take over certain business operations. Most chilling was a folder labeled Emma Problem, containing Emma's school records, psychological evaluations from her grief counseling after her mother's death, and notes about medications that could be used to trigger teenage emotional instability. She's planning to make me look crazy, Emma realized. If something happens to Marcus, she'll claim I had a breakdown. Mrs. Chun's expression was grim. She eliminates witnesses. Very professional. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Found something important. Meet me at the library now. 20 minutes later, Emma sat in the library computer lab as Jake pulled up financial records he'd accessed through methods she probably shouldn't ask about. Your stepmother isn't Victoria Matthews, Jake said quietly. She's Catherine Voss, wanted in connection with the deaths of 3 wealthy men in Nevada, Arizona, and Oregon over the past 5 years. Emma's blood ran cold as Jake showed her newspaper articles about the deaths. A tech entrepreneur who died in a rock-climbing accident, a real estate mogul who suffered a heart attack while jogging, a pharmaceutical executive who died from an allergic reaction to medication he'd never been prescribed. Each man had recently married or gotten engaged to women who used different names, but the same Mo, Jake continued. Whirlwind romance, quick engagement, life insurance changes, then convenient death. Emma stared at the photos accompanying the articles. The woman in each picture looked different hair color, different style, but the eyes were unmistakably Victoria's. She's done this before, Emma whispered. Emma, you need to go to the police now. This woman is a serial killer. Emma's phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the screen. Where are you? Victoria's voice was sharp, suspicious. You missed your appointment with the boarding school counselor. Emma's mouth went dry. There had been no appointment scheduled. I'm at the library, studying. Come home. Now? Marcus wants to discuss your future. The line went dead. Emma looked at Jake, terror written across her face. She knows, Emma whispered. She knows we've been investigating her. Emma found Victoria's real identification documents in a hidden compartment behind the bedroom. Mirror a California driver's license for Catherine Marie Voss, complete with Victoria's photo and an address in Los Angeles. The license had expired 3 years ago, just before the first accidental death in Nevada. Emma photographed everything with trembling hands, passports for 3 different identities, credit cards in various names, and a manila envelope containing what looked like legal documents. Her heart pounded as she heard the front door slam downstairs. Emma, Victoria's voice echoed through the house. Come down here, now. Emma quickly restored everything to its hiding place and crept to the top of the stairs. Victoria stood in the foyer, no longer bothering to maintain her sweet facade. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her designer jacket wrinkled. She looked like someone who'd been running. Marcus isn't home yet, Victoria said, her voice carrying a new edge, which gives us time for an honest conversation. Emma remained frozen at the top of the stairs. I know you've been busy, little detective, you and that housekeeper of yours. Victoria began climbing Emma's hand closed around the small recording device. Mrs. Chun had given her that morning a professional-grade recorder disguised as a pen. The older woman had insisted Emma carry it everywhere, saying evidence gathered under threat would be even more powerful in court. You're right, Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. I have been investigating you, but not just me. Victoria's confidence flickered for a moment. What do you mean? Jake Martinez from my school. He's a computer genius. He's been documenting everything, your real identity, your financial crimes, the other men you killed. Emma forced herself to meet Victoria's eyes. If something happens to me, he has instructions to go straight to the police. It was a lie, but Victoria didn't know that. Clever little mouse, Victoria hissed, but not clever enough. Emma suddenly darted toward her mother's room. Victoria closed behind. In the familiar space filled with her mother's remaining possessions, Emma felt a surge of strength. She grabbed the heavy crystal paperweight from her mother's desk, a gift from Marcus on their anniversary. Stay back. Emma held the paperweight like a weapon. Victoria laughed. What are you going to do? Throw that at me. You can barely speak above a whisper most days. You're wrong about me, Emma said, her voice growing stronger. You're wrong about everything. You think I'm weak because I'm quiet, but you don't understand the difference. Victoria advanced slowly, the syringe still in her hand. Enlighten. Quiet people listen. Quiet people observe. Quiet people see things that loud, confident people miss. Emma backed toward the window, but her movement was calculated now, not panicked. You missed that Mrs. Chun was a detective. You missed that Jake was documenting your digital footprints. You missed that I've been recording this entire conversation. Victoria's eyes flicked to the pen in Emma's hand, finally understanding. You think you're so smart, Victoria snarled, lunging forward. Emma threw the paperweight, striking Victoria in the shoulder. Victoria stumbled, dropping the syringe, which shattered on the hardwood floor. Emma bolted past her, racing down the stairs toward the kitchen, where Mrs. Chun lay unconscious, but breathing near the basement door. Victoria's heels clicked rapidly behind her as Emma grabbed the landline phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. 911. What's your emergency? My name is Emma Chun. There's an intruder in my house who threatened to kill me. She's also hurt our housekeeper. Please send police and an ambulance to 2847 Maple Ridge Drive. Victoria appeared in the kitchen doorway, her perfect facade completely shattered. Blood trickled from her shoulder where the paperweight had hit, and her eyes held a fury Emma had never seen in another human being. You stupid little girl, Victoria breathed. You have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done, Emma said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. I've stopped you from killing my stepfather. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Victoria's head snapped toward the sound, her expression calculating. For a moment, Emma thought she might try to run. Instead, Victoria smiled, a cold, empty expression that chilled Emma to her bones. This isn't over, Victoria whispered. You'll never prove everything, and Marcus will never forgive you for destroying his happiness. But Emma was no longer the girl who feared not being believed. She had found her voice, and she had used it to save the people she loved. Marcus arrived home to find police cars lining the driveway and paramedics wheeling Mrs. Chun into an ambulance. Emma sat on the front steps, wrapped in a shock blanket, giving her statement to Detective Sarah Rodriguez while Victoria was being loaded into a police car in handcuffs. Emma, Marcus ran toward her, his face pale with panic. What happened? Are you hurt? Detective Rodriguez stepped forward before Emma could speak. Mr. Chun, your daughter has been very brave tonight. She uncovered evidence of a serious threat against your life and possibly prevented your murder. Marcus looked between Emma and the police car where Victoria sat, her perfect mask finally stripped away. I don't understand. Victoria would never. Sir, Detective Rodriguez interrupted gently. The woman you know as Victoria Matthews is actually Catherine Voss, wanted in connection with multiple homicides across 3 states. Your daughter has been investigating her for weeks. Emma pulled out the evidence portfolio. She and Mrs. Chun had assembled dozens of photographs, financial documents, and digital evidence organized in the precise format Mrs. Chun had taught her. Her hands still shook, but her voice was steady as she began to explain. The surveillance equipment in your office, your car, throughout the house. The forged signatures on your life insurance policy. The offshore accounts where she's been, moving your money. Emma's voice grew stronger with each revelation. She's not who she says she is, Marcus. She's killed 3 other men, exactly like this. Marcus sank onto the steps beside Emma, his face crumbling as he processed the evidence. The financial documents, the changes to my accounts. I trusted her completely. Detective Rodriguez nodded, grimly. Mr. Chun, we've been tracking Catherine Voss for 2 years. Her pattern is always the same: identify wealthy widowers or divorced men, research their backgrounds extensively, create chance encounters, and systematically isolate them from family while gaining access to their finances. Emma showed Marcus the recording device, still clutched in her hand. I recorded her confession tonight. She admitted to planning your death, to watching our family for years, even to timing her approach around Mom's illness. Marcus stared at the small device, his businessman's mind finally engaging with the evidence before him. The life insurance changes. I thought they were standard paperwork. The financial advisor Victoria recommended was working with her, Detective Rodriguez confirmed. We've arrested him as well. Mr. Chun, without your daughter's investigation, you would likely have been dead within weeks. Emma watched Marcus process this information, seeing the exact moment when his love for Victoria transformed into horror at how completely he'd been deceived. Emma, he whispered, turning to face her fully for the first time in months. I wouldn't listen to you. I dismissed everything you tried to tell me. Emma felt tears burning her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. You are grieving. She knew exactly how to exploit that. Marcus pulled Emma into a fierce hug, holding her as if he'd almost lost her, which he had. Your mother would be so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. You saved my life. Over Marcus's shoulder, Emma watched the police car carrying Catherine Voss disappear down their street. The woman who had nearly destroyed their family was gone, but Emma knew the real work was just beginning. Mrs. Chun? Emma asked. Concussion and some bruised ribs, but she'll be fine, Detective Rodriguez assured her. She's asking for you at the hospital. Emma looked at Marcus, seeing him clearly for the first time in 2 years. Not the distant, grieving widower who'd been too lost in his own pain to see her, but her stepfather, the man her mother had loved, the man who'd built blanket forts and told bedtime stories, the man who'd been there all along underneath the grief and manipulation. Can we go see her? Emma asked. Marcus nodded, his arms still around her shoulders. We'll go together. As a family. 3 months later, Emma sat in the witness box of the San Francisco Superior Court, her voice clear and steady as she read from her court testimony transcript. The courtroom was packed with reporters, law enforcement officials, and families of Catherine Voss's previous victims. The defendant systematically surveilled my family for over 2 years, Emma testified, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She researched my stepfather's business, his security routines, his emotional vulnerabilities following my mother's death. She installed surveillance equipment throughout our home and vehicles, forged legal documents, and stole millions of dollars from his accounts. District Attorney Michael Chong nodded encouragingly. And what did Ms. Voss tell you about her intentions regarding your stepfather? Emma's voice remained steady despite the weight of the moment. She admitted to planning his murder. She said she had killed other men using similar methods, and that my stepfather's death would look like a tragic accident. Catherine Voss sat at the defendant's table. Her appearance dramatically changed from the polished woman who had once charmed Marcus. Her hair was now its natural brown, pulled back severely, and she wore a simple orange jumpsuit. She stared at Emma with undisguised hatred, but Emma no longer felt afraid. Marcus sat in the gallery behind the prosecution table, his presence a steady source of strength. Mrs. Chun was beside him, her arm still in a sling, but her eyes bright with pride as she watched Emma testify. Defense attorney James Morrison stood for cross-examination. Miss Chun, isn't it true that you were jealous of your stepfather's relationship and wanted to break up his engagement? Emma had prepared for this question with the prosecution team. I was concerned for my stepfather's safety based on evidence I gathered over several weeks. My feelings about the relationship were irrelevant compared to preventing his murder. But you admit you didn't want your stepfather to remarry? Emma looked directly at the jury. I wanted my stepfather to be safe and happy. Catherine Voss was planning to kill him for his money. That's not love, that's predation. The trial continued for 2 weeks, with Emma's evidence serving as the foundation of the prosecution's case. Her meticulous documentation, guided by Mrs. Chun's professional expertise, provided the timeline and motive that connected Catherine Voss to her previous crimes. Jake Martinez testified about the digital evidence he'd helped uncover, Mrs. Chan's testimony about the surveillance equipment, and Catherine's behavior patterns added credibility to Emma's account. Financial experts traced the money laundering scheme that had moved Marcus's assets to overseas accounts. Most damning was Emma's recording of Catherine's confession, played for the jury in Catherine's own voice. I've been planning Marcus's death since before your mother even got sick. Cancer just made the timeline more convenient. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours. Guilty on all counts, the foreman announced. Murder in the first degree for the deaths of Robert Harrison, David Martinez, and Thomas Wright. Attempted murder in the first degree for the planned killing of Marcus Chun. Grand theft, identity fraud, and conspiracy charges. Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her as Catherine Voss was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice for the men who had died and protection for Marcus and for any future targets Catherine might have chosen. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Emma and Marcus. For once, Emma didn't shrink from the attention. She had found her voice, and she intended to use it. I want other families to know that if something feels wrong, trust that instinct, Emma told the cameras. Quiet people often see things others miss. Don't be afraid to speak up, even when no one wants to listen. The new family photo sat on Marcus's desk at Chung Technologies, replacing the formal corporate headshots that had dominated the space during his relationship with Catherine. In the picture, Emma, Marcus, and Mrs. Chun stood together in their garden, genuine smiles replacing the artificial poses Catherine had orchestrated for her. Manipulative purposes. Emma had insisted Mrs. Chun be in the photo. After the trial, Marcus had offered Mrs. Chun a permanent place in their family, not as an employee, but as the wise woman who had helped save their lives and guided them back to each other. She's not just our housekeeper, Emma had told Marcus firmly. She's family. Mrs. Chun had accepted with tears in her eyes. Moving into the guest suite, they converted into her own apartment. Her presence brought stability and wisdom to a household still healing from months of deception and manipulation. Emma's therapy sessions with Dr. Patricia Williams were helping her process not just the trauma of Catherine's threats, but the deeper grief she'd been carrying since her mother's death. For the first time in 2 years, Emma was learning to voice her feelings instead of burying them in silence. You've developed remarkable resilience, Dr. Williams observed during one session. Your ability to trust your instincts and act on them potentially saved multiple lives. Emma still struggled with moments of doubt, wondering if she could have acted sooner, if she could have prevented Mrs. Chun's injury, if she could have made Marcus listen earlier. But therapy was teaching her that healing meant accepting both her strength and her limitations. Marcus was attending his own counseling sessions, working through the guilt of how completely he'd been deceived and how badly he'd failed to protect Emma. His grief over Sarah's death had made him vulnerable to Catherine's manipulation, but recognizing that pattern was helping him become a more present father figure. Their dinner conversations, once stilted affairs dominated by Catherine's careful direction, had become genuine exchanges. Marcus asked about Emma's day, her classes, her thoughts on everything from school drama to current events. Emma found herself sharing observations and opinions she'd kept hidden for years. I want to study criminal justice in college, Emma announced one evening over Mrs. Chun's famous dumplings. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, following in Mrs. Chun's footsteps. I want to help people who feel invisible, who aren't being heard, Emma explained. There are probably other families dealing with people like Catherine right now. Mrs. Chun beamed with pride. You would make excellent detective. You have patience, observation skills, and courage to act when necessary. The house itself felt different now. Catherine's carefully curated decorations had been removed, replaced with photos of Sarah, Emma's artwork from childhood, and Mrs. Chun's plants that brought life to previously sterile spaces. The surveillance equipment was gone, the hidden cameras removed, the listening devices destroyed. Emma could finally be herself in her own home. No longer the invisible girl walking on eggshells, but a young woman whose voice mattered, whose instincts were valued, whose place in the family was secure. Emma's journal became her constant companion, a leather-bound notebook that traveled with her everywhere. Dr. Williams had suggested journaling as a way to process her experiences. But for Emma, it became something more, a record of her growth. From invisible observer to confident advocate. March 15th, she wrote one morning before school. 6 months since Catherine's arrest. Had nightmare again about finding Mrs. Chun unconscious, but this time I wasn't scared in the dream. I knew what to do. Marcus says that's progress. My subconscious is finally believing I can handle dangerous situations. The journal contained more than just reflections on trauma recovery. Emma documented her expanding world, leadership roles. At school, her growing friendship with Jake Martinez, and her evolving relationship with Marcus that felt increasingly like a real father-daughter bond. Her AP psychology teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, had noticed Emma's transformation from the quiet girl who rarely spoke to someone who offered thoughtful contributions to class. Discussions about criminal behavior and victim psychology. You have insights that come from real experience, Ms. Rodriguez told Emma after a particularly engaging discussion about manipulation tactics. Have you considered presenting your research at the state psychology conference? Emma felt a familiar flutter of her old anxiety, but it was tempered now by confidence in her abilities. What would I present about? Recognition of predatory behavior in domestic settings. Your case study could help other families identify similar threats. That evening, Emma discussed the opportunity with Marcus and Mrs. Chun over dinner. The idea of speaking publicly about her experience still felt daunting, but the potential to help others outweighed her fear. Your mother gave presentations at medical conferences, Marcus remembered. She was nervous every time, but she said sharing knowledge was worth the discomfort. Mrs. Chun nodded approvingly. In my detective work, we shared case studies to help other officers recognize patterns. Your experience could save lives. Emma's relationship with Jake had evolved too. What started as academic collaboration had grown into genuine friendship, and recently, something deeper. He understood her quiet intensity, her need to observe before acting, her commitment to protecting others. You're not the same person you were a year ago, Jake observed as they studied together in the library, where Emma had first shared her fears about Catherine. But it's not like you became someone different. It's like you became more yourself. Emma looked around the familiar space, remembering how terrified she'd been that day, how certain she was that no one would believe her. Now she was planning to share her story with strangers, confident that her voice could make a difference. Marcus had established new family traditions that honored both Sarah's memory and their current reality. Sunday dinners always included Mrs. Chun's stories about her detective work in Beijing. Monthly visits to Sarah's grave became opportunities for Emma to update her mother on her growing confidence and academic achievements. The house that had once felt like a stage set for her, Catherine's performance, now felt like a home again. Emma's artwork returned to the refrigerator. Mrs. Chun's cooking filled the kitchen with comforting aromas. Marcus's laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent for too long. Emma was no longer invisible, but she had learned that being seen meant more than just speaking louder. It meant trusting that her perspective had value. Emma stood at the podium of the Community Safety Awards banquet, holding the certificate that recognized her courage in exposing Catherine Voss's crimes. The award wasn't what mattered to her. It was the opportunity to address an audience of law enforcement officials, social workers, and community leaders about recognizing predatory behavior. My name is Emma Chun, and 8 months ago, I was a 17-year-old girl who believed no one would listen to her. She began, her voice steady and clear. I'm here tonight because I learned that being quiet doesn't mean being powerless, and that sometimes the people society overlooks are the ones who see the most clearly. Marcus sat at the head table, his eyes bright with pride as he watched his stepdaughter command the room's attention. Mrs. Chun sat beside him, beaming as Emma shared the investigative techniques she had taught her. Trust your instincts, especially when those instincts make other people uncomfortable, Emma continued. Predators count on our desire to be polite, to avoid conflict, to give people the benefit of the doubt. But protection sometimes requires us to be impolite. Detective Rodriguez, who had worked Emma's case, nodded approvingly from the audience. Since Catherine's conviction, she had consulted with Emma on 2 other cases involving suspected domestic predators, valuing Emma's perspective on recognizing manipulation tactics. After the ceremony, Emma was approached by Maria Santos, a social worker who specialized in family crisis intervention. Your presentation was remarkable, Maria said. We're developing a training program for teenagers about recognizing dangerous relationships. Would you consider being part of our advisory board? Emma felt the familiar thrill of being asked to contribute her expertise rather than being dismissed. Because of her age, I'd like that very much. The recognition had opened doors Emma hadn't expected. Local news stations interviewed her about teen advocacy. The district attorney's office invited her to participate in victim impact panels. College admissions counselors who had read about her case reached out to discuss criminal justice programs. But the recognition that meant the most came from Marcus during their weekly father-daughter dinners, a tradition they'd established to ensure they always had dedicated time to really talk. I've been thinking about something, Marcus said over dessert at their favorite restaurant. Your mother always said you had an old soul, that you understood people in ways that amazed her. I dismissed that as motherly pride, but you proved her right. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. I miss her wisdom. She's still here, Marcus said, gesturing to Emma's notebook where she'd been jotting down observations about the people around them, a habit that had become second nature. In your ability to see what others miss in your courage to act on what you observe, in your determination to protect people you love. Emma's relationship with Jake had deepened into something serious and supportive. He understood her need to advocate for overlooked people, and he used his technical skills to help her research and document cases where she consulted with law enforcement. Mrs. Chun had become the grandmother figure Emma had never had, offering wisdom about navigating the world as a strong woman while maintaining compassion for others. Vulnerabilities. Emma no longer saw herself as the invisible girl who had stumbled into heroism. She was becoming the woman her mother had always believed she could be, someone who used her voice to protect others, who trusted her instincts, and who understood that true strength often came from quiet observation rather than loud confrontation. Emma's college acceptance letter from UC Berkeley's criminal justice program arrived on a Tuesday morning in spring, exactly 1 year after Catherine Voss's sentencing. The thick envelope bore the university seal, and inside was not just an acceptance, but an offer for a full scholarship based on her exceptional demonstration of civic courage and leadership. Emma read the letter aloud to Marcus and Mrs. Chun over breakfast, her voice steady with excitement rather than the whispered uncertainty that had characterized her speech for so many years. They want me to participate in their victim advocacy research program, Emma explained, scanning the detailed acceptance packet. Students work with law enforcement agencies to develop better protocols for investigating domestic predation cases. Marcus beamed with pride. Your mother would be over the moon. She always said education was the foundation of making real change in the world. Mrs. Chun nodded approvingly. You will help many families. Your experience, it is valuable education that cannot be learned from books. The past year had transformed Emma from a frightened teenager into a confident young woman who understood her unique strengths. Her quiet observation skills, once a source of invisibility, had become powerful tools for helping others recognize dangerous situations. Through her work with the district attorney's office, Emma had consulted on 12 cases involving suspected manipulation or financial abuse. Her ability to spot inconsistencies in behavior patterns, learned through months of watching Catherine's performance, had helped identify 3 other predators before they could complete their schemes. You see things differently than law enforcement officers, Detective Rodriguez had explained during one consultation. You understand the victim's perspective, the emotional manipulation tactics, the way predators exploit grief and loneliness. Emma's advocacy work had expanded beyond criminal cases. She spoke at high schools about trusting instincts and recognizing emotional manipulation. She volunteered with grief counseling groups, helping people process loss without becoming vulnerable to predatory behavior. Jake, now her boyfriend of 6 months, often accompanied her to speaking engagements. Their relationship had grown from friendship into partnership, built on mutual respect for each other's strengths and shared commitment to using their skills to help others. You're going to change how the system works, Jake told her after watching her present to a group of social workers. You're going to make sure other families don't go through what yours did. Emma's transformation was most evident in her relationship with Marcus. They had evolved from the distant stepfather and invisible stepdaughter they'd been during Catherine's manipulation into a genuine father-daughter partnership. Marcus regularly asked for Emma's perspective on business decisions, valuing her ability to read people and situations. I want you to know something, Marcus told Emma the night before her high school graduation. Even before Catherine, even when I was lost in grief after your mother's death, you were never invisible to me. I just didn't know how to reach you. Emma squeezed his hand. We're reaching each other now. That's what matters. Mrs. Chun had become the cornerstone of their family, her wisdom and protective instincts providing stability as Emma prepared for college. She would remain in the house, maintaining their home base while Emma pursued her education. You carry your mother's heart and your own strength, Mrs. Chun told Emma. This combination will help many people find safety and justice. Emma looked at her college acceptance letter again, reading the words that represented not just academic opportunity, but validation of her journey from invisible observer to confident advocate. She was no longer the shy girl who whispered warnings that no one heard. She was Emma Chun, a young woman who had found her voice and learned to use it to protect others. Emma's first published article appeared in the UC Berkeley Journal of Criminal Justice under the title, Recognizing Predatory Patterns, A Survivor's Guide to Domestic Financial Crime. The piece detailed the systematic methods predators use to isolate and exploit vulnerable targets. Written from the unique perspective of someone who had both observed and survived such an attack. At 18, Emma sat in her dorm room, reading the acceptance emails from law enforcement agencies across the country who wanted to implement her recognition protocols in their training programs. Her article had been shared by victim advocacy groups, cited in academic papers, and translated into 3 languages for international distribution. "Your work is saving lives," Professor Janet Morrison had told her after class. "We're getting reports from police departments that officers trained in your protocols have identified and stopped 3 potential predation schemes in the past 6 months." Emma's phone rang, Marcus calling for their weekly check-in. Their relationship had grown stronger during her first year at Berkeley, built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than the obligation that had characterized their early years together. "How's my favorite college student?" Marcus asked, his voice warm with pride. "Tired but happy," Emma admitted. "I just finished a consultation with the FBI about a case in Oregon. They think they've found another serial predator using Catherine's methods." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Are you okay with that level of involvement? I worry about you reliving those experiences." Emma appreciated his concern, but she had learned to manage the emotional impact of her work through therapy and strong support systems. "It's hard sometimes, but knowing that other families won't go through what we did makes it worthwhile." Mrs. Chun's voice came through the phone as she joined the conversation from the kitchen extension. Emma helping others heal from her own healing. Very wise approach. Mrs. Chun remained the anchor of their family, managing the household, and Don serving as Emma's long-distance advisor on complex cases. Her detective experience, combined with Emma's victim perspective, had proven invaluable in training law enforcement officers to recognize subtle manipulation tactics. Jake visited Emma at Berkeley most weekends, their relationship having survived the transition to college with remarkable strength. He was studying computer science at Stanford, developing digital security protocols to help potential victims detect surveillance and financial manipulation. "We make a good team," Jake often said. "Your people skills and my tech skills. We're going to revolutionize victim protection." Emma's advocacy work had expanded beyond individual cases. She testified before the California state legislature about improving victim protection laws. She consulted with dating app companies about implementing safety features. She spoke at conferences for social workers, therapists, and law enforcement officers. But the work that meant the most to her was the support group she facilitated for other young people who had experienced family manipulation or abuse. Meeting twice a month at a community center near campus. The group provided a space for teenagers and young adults to share their experiences and learn recognition skills. "You gave us permission to trust our instincts," one group member told her. "Before meeting you, I thought I was crazy for being suspicious of my mom's boyfriend. Now I understand that my gut feelings were actually protecting me." Emma kept her mother's wedding ring in a small box on her desk, a reminder of the love that had originally created their family. And on